Picture this, a dusty train platform in 1885, somewhere in the heart of Kansas. The steam hisses, the whistle fades into the distance, and there she stands, a young woman clutching a worn carpetbag, tears streaming down her face. She's traveled over 1,000 miles to marry a stranger, only to discover that sometimes the family we need isn't the one we expected to find. Before we dive into this incredible true story of courage, love, and second chances, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell, because stories like this one will touch your heart and remind you that miracles can happen in the most unexpected places. The autumn wind swept across the Kansas plains as the 347 train from Chicago pulled into Millbrook station. Steam billowed from the locomotive, and passengers hurried toward the warmth of the depot building, all except one. Margaret O'Sullivan stood frozen on the wooden platform, her worn brown carpetbag clutched tightly in her gloved hands. At 22, she possessed quiet beauty, auburn hair pinned beneath a simple blue bonnet, green eyes that held depths of kindness and sorrow. The letter in her coat pocket felt like it weighed 100 pounds. Dear Miss O'Sullivan, I regret to inform you that my son Thomas passed away from pneumonia 2 weeks ago. I know you traveled far to marry him, and I'm sorry for your loss and trouble. There's a return ticket waiting for you at the station. Samuel Hartwell. Margaret had sold everything she owned in Chicago to pay for the journey west. The return ticket was her only way back to a city where she had nothing left. The tears she'd been holding back finally spilled over. She was completely, utterly alone. "Ma'am, are you all right?" The small voice made her look down. A boy of perhaps 7 years old stood beside her, sandy hair tousled by the wind, wearing patched overalls and an oversized coat. His blue eyes looked up at her with genuine concern. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just overwhelmed by the journey." The boy studied her face seriously. "You look sad. My pa says when people look sad, sometimes they need a friend." Despite her heartbreak, Margaret smiled. "Your father sounds wise. What's your name?" "Billy Hartwell," the boy said. Then his eyes widened. "Oh, are you Miss O'Sullivan?" "The lady who was going to marry my Uncle Thomas." Margaret's heart clenched. "Yes, I am." Billy's face lit up with excitement. "I knew it! Pa said you might come even though Uncle Thomas went to heaven." "I'm real sorry about that." Uncle Thomas was nice. The boy's simple, innocent way of speaking about death made Margaret's grief feel less isolating. "Thank you, Billy. Pa's over there." Billy pointed toward a tall man standing near a wagon. "He's been real worried about you coming all this way for nothing." Margaret saw a man in his early 30s, tension evident in his shoulders as he glanced toward the train. "He looks nervous," Margaret observed. "Pa gets nervous when he has to talk to ladies," Billy confided. "He says he never knows the right words, but he's real good at other stuff. He makes the best flapjacks in all of Kansas." Margaret found herself genuinely smiling. "He sounds like a good father." Billy's expression grew wistful. "He tries real hard. It's just been him and me since Ma died when I was little. I don't remember her much, but Pa says she was beautiful and kind, just like—" He stopped, cheeks reddening. "Just like what, Billy?" The boy looked down at his boots. "Just like I always imagined a ma would be. Like you." The words filled a hollow space in Margaret's chest. She knelt down to Billy's eye level. "Billy, that's one of the kindest things anyone has ever said to me. Really." "Really?" Margaret straightened his coat collar naturally. "Now I suppose I should speak with your father." Billy nodded eagerly. "Will you come home with us, just for supper? Pub made pot roast, and I could show you the horses and barn cats." Margaret knew she should take the return ticket and leave, but looking into Billy's hopeful face, she couldn't disappoint him. "I suppose I could stay for supper, if your father doesn't mind." "He won't mind." Billy grabbed her hand enthusiastically. "Come on." As they approached Samuel Hartwell, Margaret was struck by his resemblance to Thomas. Same strong jawline, same kind eyes, though his were brown rather than blue. But where Thomas's letters had described a carefree spirit, Samuel carried the weight of responsibility. "Pa, this is Miss O'Sullivan." "I invited her for supper." Samuel's eyes met Margaret's with surprise and concern. "Miss O'Sullivan, I didn't think you'd come after my letter. I was already on the train when your telegram reached Chicago. I'm sorry for your loss." "Thomas wrote wonderful letters." Samuel's expression softened. "He was excited about your correspondence. He said you made him feel less alone out here." He paused. "I'm sorry you made the journey for nothing." "It wasn't for nothing," Margaret said, glancing at Billy. "I've already made a new friend." Billy beamed. "And she's going to have supper with us." Samuel looked between his son and Margaret, weighing his options. Finally he nodded. "Of course. It's the least we can do." The ride to the Hartwell farm took them through rolling hills dotted with autumn trees. Billy chattered constantly while Samuel drove in thoughtful silence. Margaret found herself relaxing, lulled by the wagon's rhythm and the boys' enthusiasm. The Hartwell farm spread before them, a modest but well-maintained homestead with a white farmhouse. "Red barn and carefully tended fields. It's beautiful," Margaret said. "Meaning it," Uncle Thomas said when he got married. "He was going to build a house right by the creek," Billy said proudly. Margaret felt sadness for dreams that would never be realized, but also strange peace. This place felt like home, in a way Chicago never had. As Samuel helped her down from the wagon, their hands touched briefly, and Margaret felt unexpected awareness. She looked up to find him watching her with a puzzled expression. "Is something wrong, Mr. Hartwell?" He shook his head quickly. "It's just—" "Thomas described you, but he didn't mention how much you looked like Billy's mother." The same eyes, the same gentle way of speaking. Margaret felt her cheeks warm. "I hope that doesn't make you uncomfortable." "No," Samuel said thoughtfully. "It's just unexpected." As they walked toward the house, Billy running ahead, Margaret wondered if coming here had been a mistake. She was already growing attached to this place, to this child who looked at her with such hope. But as warm light spilled from the farmhouse windows to welcome them, she decided that maybe, just for one evening, she could imagine what it might be like to belong somewhere again. The Hartwell farmhouse was exactly what Margaret had imagined, cozy and lived in, with handmade furniture and a kitchen that smelled of home-cooked meals. Billy immediately began giving her a tour, proudly showing his carved horses and the reading corner where his father taught him letters. "And this was Uncle Thomas's room," Billy said, opening a door to reveal a simply furnished bedroom overlooking the creek. "Pa says maybe someday I can have it." Margaret's throat tightened, seeing Thomas's belongings still arranged on the dresser. A silver brush, books, and a framed photograph of him with Samuel and Billy. "He looks happy," she said softly. "He was." Samuel's voice came from behind them. "Especially after he started writing to you. He'd read your letters at supper sometimes." Margaret turned, surprised. "He shared my letters?" Samuel's cheeks reddened. "I hope you don't mind. Thomas was excited, and Billy and I don't get much outside news. Your stories about the orphanage children, the way you described Chicago's seasons, it brought brightness to our evenings." "I don't mind," Margaret said, though she felt oddly exposed. "I enjoyed writing to him." Billy tugged her skirt. "Miss Margaret, are you going to stay in Uncle Thomas's room tonight?" Margaret looked at Samuel in surprise. "You prepared the room?" "The next train to Chicago doesn't come until Thursday." "That's 3 days from now." Margaret felt panic. 3 days? Is that a problem?" Samuel asked, noticing her distress. "I just hadn't planned on staying so long." She didn't mention her lack of money for lodging. Billy clapped his hands. 3 whole days. That's enough time to show you everything." Samuel watched his son's excitement with mixed emotions. "Billy, Miss O'Sullivan might have other plans." "Actually," Margaret interrupted, surprising herself, "I'd love to see those places, Billy, if your father doesn't mind." "Really? You really want to stay?" "I really do," Margaret said, meaning it completely. Over supper, the most delicious pot roast Margaret had ever tasted, she found herself relaxing completely. Billy regaled her with farm stories, while Samuel contributed quieter observations, his face softening when he watched his son. "Tell Miss Margaret about the apple tree," Samuel suggested, and Billy launched into an animated tale that had Margaret laughing. "You should have seen Pa's face when he found me 20 feet up." Billy giggled. "I was terrified," Samuel admitted. "I couldn't figure out how you'd gotten there." Margaret watched the easy affection between father and son with joy and longing. This was what she'd dreamed of, not just a husband but a family. After supper, Billy showed Margaret his treasures, smooth stones, a bird's nest, and a half-finished carving Thomas had been teaching him. "Uncle Thomas said I had good hands for whittling," Billy said proudly. "Will you help me finish it?" Margaret glanced at Samuel. "I'm not sure I know how." "I could teach you," Billy said eagerly. "We could work on it together." The idea of sharing a project with this enthusiastic child appealed to Margaret. "I'd like that very much." As evening wore on, Margaret settled into the household rhythm. She helped with dishes while Billy played on the floor, and when bedtime came, she listened to his prayers and tucked him in naturally. "Will you still be here when I wake up?" Billy asked sleepily. "I'll be here," Margaret promised. "Good. I dreamed about having a ma and she looked just like you." Margaret's breath caught. She sat with Billy until he slept, then returned to the kitchen where Samuel was banking the fire. "He's asleep," she said softly. Samuel nodded. "He doesn't usually take to strangers so quickly. You have a way with him. He's wonderful. You've done a remarkable job. I've done my best, but a boy needs a mother's influence." Thomas used to say that constantly. He was looking forward to having you here as Billy's mother figure. The words hung heavy between them. Margaret felt her cheeks warm. "Mr. Hartwell, Samuel," he said quietly. "Please, Samuel. I don't expect anything from you or Billy. I'll take the return train Thursday." Samuel stared into the dying fire. When he spoke, his voice was low. "What if I said I didn't want you to take that train?" Margaret's heart skipped. "What do you mean?" He turned to face her fully, vulnerability in his expression. "Billy's not the only one who's been lonely, Margaret. May I call you Margaret?" She nodded. "Through Thomas's sharing of your letters, I felt like I got to know you. Your kindness, your strength, the way you cared for orphaned children. I found myself looking forward to hearing about your life almost as much as Thomas did." Margaret's pulse quickened. "What are you saying?" "Maybe Thomas's death doesn't have to mean the end of your journey west. Maybe it could be the beginning of something else." Before Margaret could respond, Billy's voice called out. "Pa, I had a bad dream," Samuel sighed. "I should go to him." "Let me," Margaret said impulsively. Samuel looked surprised but nodded. "He sometimes dreams about losing his mother." Margaret found Billy sitting up, tears on his cheeks. Without hesitation, she gathered him into her arms. "What was the dream about?" "I dreamed you went away," Billy whispered. "Just like Ma and Uncle Thomas." "Everyone always goes away." Margaret's heart broke for this child, who had lost so much. "I'm here right now, and that's what matters." "But you're gonna leave Thursday." Margaret found herself making a promise she wasn't sure she could keep. "What if I told you I was thinking about staying longer?" Billy's face lit up. "Really?" "I'm thinking about it. But I'd need to talk to your father." "He likes you," Billy said confidently. "I can tell. He smiles different when you're around." When Margaret returned to the kitchen, Samuel was waiting with coffee. "How is he?" "Better. He was worried about me leaving." Margaret sat across from Samuel. "He's been through so much loss." "Too much. That's part of why I said what I did earlier. Billy needs stability, someone who won't leave." Margaret met his eyes. "And what do you need, Samuel?" The question caught him off guard. He considered carefully. "I need someone who understands that love isn't always about grand gestures. Sometimes it's about showing up every day, choosing to build something together, even when it's hard." "That sounds like the kind of love that lasts," Margaret said softly. "It is." Samuel reached across the table, fingers brushing hers. "Margaret, I know this is sudden and not what you planned, but would you consider staying? Not just for days, but permanently?" Margaret's heart raced. "Are you asking me to marry you?" "I'm asking you to give us a chance, to see if what I think I see between us could grow into something real. Billy already adores you, and I find myself hoping you'll say yes." Margaret looked around the cozy kitchen, thought about Billy's trusting smile and Samuel's quiet strength. and realized that sometimes the best things came in unexpected packages. "I'd like that chance," she said quietly. "Very much." Samuel's smile was like sunrise after a long night. As they sat together, making tentative plans for a future neither had imagined, Margaret realized that sometimes the greatest adventures began not with departures, but with the simple decision to stay. The next morning dawned crisp and clear. Margaret woke feeling more rested than she had in months, listening to the sounds of farm life, roosters crowing, cattle lowing, and the cheerful voices of Samuel and Billy starting their chores. In the kitchen, she found a note by the coffee pot, "Gone to milk cows. Coffee's ready. Make yourself at home." The simple kindness touched her more than elaborate gestures ever could. Billy burst through the back door, cheeks red from cold and eyes bright with excitement. "Miss Margaret, you're awake! Burr said I should let you sleep, but I was hoping you'd be up so I could show you how to collect eggs." Margaret smiled at his enthusiasm. "I'd love to learn." Billy looked at her dress and shook his head. "You might want Pa's old coat. It's cold, and the chickens can be ornery." Samuel appeared as Billy helped Margaret into an oversized coat. "I see you've been recruited for farm duty," he said, eyes crinkling with amusement. "Billy's going to teach me about chickens." "I'm afraid I'm a complete novice." "The chickens don't mind," Samuel assured her. "They're equal opportunity troublemakers." A bold red hen wandered into the kitchen and began pecking at crumbs. "Henrietta," Billy scolded, shooing the hen outside. "You know you're not supposed to be in the house." Margaret laughed as the boy chased the unrepentant chicken while Samuel watched with long-suffering expression. "Does this happen often?" "Daily," Samuel said dryly. "Henrietta thinks she's family." The morning passed quickly as Billy gave Margaret a comprehensive farm tour. She learned to collect eggs, feed pigs, and helped Samuel repair storm-damaged fence. "You're a natural," Samuel said as Margaret handed him nails efficiently. "Most city folks take weeks to get comfortable around animals." "I worked at an orphanage," Margaret said, steadying a fence post. "Children and farm animals have more in common than you'd think. They respond to kindness and consistency." Samuel paused his hammering to look at her. "Is that your secret with Billy?" "Billy is capable and intelligent. He just needed someone to notice." The look Samuel gave her was so warm it made her cheeks flush. "Thomas was right about you. You do see the best in people." As days passed, Margaret settled into farm life with surprising ease. She learned to milk cows, helped with the last garden harvest, and spent hours with Billy working on his whittling project. But it was the quiet moments that meant most, sitting with Samuel on the porch after Billy slept, talking about hopes and dreams, reading to Billy by the fire, cooking together and discovering shared love of experimenting with recipes. "You know," Samuel said one evening as they cleaned up after apple pie, "I never thought I'd marry again after Sarah died." Margaret looked up from washing dishes. It was the first time he'd mentioned his late wife by name. "What changed your mind?" Samuel dried a plate carefully. "Billy, mostly. He needed a mother, and I was lonely. But I thought it would be practical, nothing more. I never expected to feel—" "What?" Margaret prompted gently. "Happy," Samuel said simply. "I never expected to feel happy again." Margaret set down her dish and turned to face him. "And do you feel happy?" Instead of answering with words, Samuel stepped closer, hands framing her face. "May I kiss you, Margaret?" Her heart hammered as she nodded, and when his lips met hers, it was gentle and sure, a promise of partnership that could grow into something deeper. "Oh," she whispered when they broke apart. "Oh?" Samuel asked, smiling. "I never knew it could feel like that. Like coming home." That's exactly what it feels like. Their courtship was unlike anything Margaret had imagined. No formal calls or elaborate gifts, but shared chores and quiet conversations, moments of laughter over Billy's antics, and gradual building of trust and affection. Margaret wrote to the Chicago orphanage, asking for her remaining possessions. The response came quickly, a warm congratulations letter and a package containing her mother's Bible, photographs, and a simple gold locket. "I want you to have this," she told Billy one evening. fastening the locket around his neck. "It was my mother's. Someday when you have a family, you can give it to someone special." Billy fingered the locket reverently. "But it's yours. It's all you have left of your ma." "No," Margaret said, smoothing his hair. "I have my memories of her, and her love lives on in how I treat others. This locket is just a thing. What matters is the love it represents." Samuel, listening from the doorway, cleared his throat roughly. "That's very generous, Margaret. It's what family does," she said simply. That night, Samuel asked her to walk to the creek. Under stars scattered like diamonds, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple gold band. "This was my mother's wedding ring. It's not fancy, but it's been in my family for 3 generations. Margaret's breath caught. "Samuel, I know we haven't known each other long, and this isn't the romantic proposal you probably dreamed of. But I love you, Margaret. I love your kindness, your strength, the way you've brought joy back into our home. Will you marry me? Will you be my wife and Billy's mother?" Margaret looked at this good man offering her everything she'd ever wanted. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, Samuel, I'll marry you." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, it fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting for her. When Samuel kissed her this time, it was with the passion of a man who had found his future. They were married 3 weeks later in Millbrook's small church, with Billy as witness and half the town attending. Margaret wore her best blue dress and carried wildflowers Billy had picked. When Pastor Williams pronounced them husband and wife, Billy let out a whoop that made everyone laugh. And when Samuel kissed his bride, Margaret felt the last piece of her heart click into place. The celebration was held at the farm, with neighbors bringing food and music. Margaret danced with Samuel to fiddle music, and later with Billy, who stood on her feet and giggled as she waltzed him around the kitchen. "Are you really my ma now?" Billy asked as she tucked him in. "If you want me to be," Margaret said softly. Billy threw his arms around her neck. "I wished for you. Every night I prayed for a ma who would love me and Pa and stay forever. Then you stepped off that train, and I knew God had answered my prayer." Margaret held him close, tears streaming. "I love you too, Billy, more than you'll ever know." As Margaret made her way to the room she now shared with Samuel, she reflected on life's strange turns. She'd come west to marry one man and found love with another. She'd expected a practical arrangement and discovered a family that filled all the empty spaces in her heart. Samuel was waiting, and as she settled into his arms, Margaret realized that sometimes the best things came not from careful planning, but from courage to embrace unexpected possibilities. "No regrets?" Samuel asked softly. Margaret thought of the unused train ticket in her dresser, of the life she'd left behind, of paths not taken. Then she thought of Billy's laughter, Samuel's steady love, the home they were building. "None," she said firmly. "Not a single one." 6 months later, Margaret stood where she'd first stepped off the train, but everything had changed. Spring air was warm with apple blossoms, and instead of tears of despair, her eyes were bright with joy as she watched the 347 from Chicago arrive. "Are you nervous?" Samuel asked, adjusting Billy's collar. "A little," Margaret admitted. "It's been so long since I've seen her." Sister Catherine, the matron of the Chicago orphanage where Margaret had worked, was coming to visit. When Margaret had written about her marriage and new life, Sister Catherine had surprised everyone by announcing her intention to see for herself how her former charge was faring. "She's gonna love the farm," Billy said confidently. "And wait till she tastes your apple pie, Ma." Margaret smiled at Billy's enthusiasm. In the months since their wedding, he had blossomed like a flower in sunshine. He was taller, more confident, and his laughter filled the farmhouse daily. "There," Billy pointed as passengers disembarked. "Is that her?" Margaret's heart leaped as she recognized Sister Catherine, still stern-looking but with kind eyes. The nun spotted them immediately and made her way over with brisk efficiency. "Margaret, my dear child," Sister Catherine said, embracing her warmly. "You look wonderful." "Absolutely radiant, Sister Catherine. I'd like you to meet my husband Samuel and my son." "Billy." Margaret's heart swelled, saying, "My son." The adoption papers had been finalized last month, making Billy officially hers-in-law, though he'd been hers in every way that mattered since that first day. "Mr. Hartwell," Sister Catherine said, shaking Samuel's hand firmly. "Thank you for making her so happy." "The happiness is mutual, sister," Samuel replied. "Margaret has brought more joy to our lives than I ever thought possible." Sister Catherine turned to Billy, who was practically bouncing. "And you must be Billy. You're even more handsome than your mother described." Billy beamed, then surprised everyone by offering Sister Catherine his arm. "Would you like me to escort you to our wagon, sister?" "Ma says it's important to be a gentleman." Sister Catherine's stern expression melted into a smile. "Why, thank you, young man. I would be honored." The drive to the farm was filled with Billy's chatter as he pointed out landmarks and shared history. Sister Catherine listened with the patience of someone who had spent decades with children. "And that's where Ma taught me to fish," Billy said, pointing to the creek. "She's not very good yet, but she's getting better." "I heard that," Margaret called from the front, making Billy giggle. Over the next few days, Sister Catherine experienced farm life. She helped with chores, listened to Billy read, and spent long hours talking with Margaret. "I was worried when I got your first letter," Sister Catherine admitted as they sat on the porch one evening, watching Samuel and Billy play catch. "A mail-order marriage seemed so risky, but seeing you now—" "It wasn't what I planned," Margaret said, her hand unconsciously moving to rest on her still flat stomach. She and Samuel had decided to wait before sharing their news, but the secret of the baby she carried made her feel like she was glowing. "The best things rarely are," Sister Catherine observed. "God has a way of writing straight with crooked lines. And Billy, how has he adjusted?" Margaret watched her son run to retrieve a ball. "It's like he was just waiting for someone to love him unconditionally." "He's thriving, sister. His reading has improved dramatically. He's grown 3 inches, and his confidence. He's becoming the boy he was always meant to be. And Samuel?" Margaret felt her cheeks warm. "Samuel is everything I never knew I wanted in a husband. He's kind and steady and patient. He makes me laugh, and he listens when I talk about dreams. We're partners in every sense," Sister Catherine nodded approvingly. "I can see it in how he looks at you. There's real love there." That evening, after Billy was tucked in with extra hugs for their guest, the 3 adults sat in the parlor. Sister Catherine had brought gifts, books for Billy, a shawl for Margaret, and whiskey for Samuel. "I have something to tell you both," Sister Catherine said, setting down her teacup. "I'm retiring from the orphanage at year's end," Margaret gasped. "Sister, you can't. The children need you. The orphanage needs fresh energy and new ideas. I've given 40 years, and it's time for someone younger to take over. What will you do?" Samuel asked. Sister Catherine smiled mysteriously. "Well, I was hoping you might have suggestions. I've fallen quite in love with Kansas during my visit. The wide open spaces, the sense of community. It reminds me of why I became a nun in the first place." Margaret stared at her former mentor. "Are you saying you want to stay here?" "I'm saying I'd like to explore the possibility. I have savings, and I was thinking Millbrook could use a school, couldn't it? A proper school where children could learn not just reading and arithmetic, but music and art, and all the things that make life beautiful." Samuel leaned forward, interested. "You'd want to start a school?" "I'd want to start a school. With your permission, I'd like to look at that land near the church. Pastor Williams mentioned it might be for sale." Margaret felt tears prick her eyes. The idea of having Sister Catherine nearby, of Billy and their future children being educated by someone who truly understood nurturing young minds, was almost too wonderful to believe. "We'd love to have you stay," Samuel said warmly. "Billy would be your first student, and I know other families would jump at the chance." "Then it's settled," Sister Catherine said with satisfaction. "I'll write to the bishop tomorrow." The next morning brought Dr. Harrison from town, making his monthly rounds. "Just a routine visit," he assured them, examining Billy and pronouncing him in perfect health. "Though I did want to congratulate you on your marriage. Mrs. Hartwell, the whole town's been talking about what a perfect match you and Samuel are." "Thank you, Dr. Harrison," Margaret said, then took a deep breath. "Actually, since you're here, I was wondering if you might examine me as well." I think I might be expecting. Samuel's head snapped up from where he'd been discussing crops with Sister Catherine. Margaret? Dr. Harrison smiled knowingly. Well, let's have a look, shall we? 20 minutes later, Dr. Harrison emerged with a broad grin. Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Hartwell. You're going to have a baby sometime around Christmas. The joy on Samuel's face was like watching sunrise. He swept Margaret into his arms and spun her around, both laughing with pure happiness. A baby, Billy shouted, having overheard. I'm going to be a big brother. You certainly are, Margaret said, kneeling to hug him. How do you feel about that? Billy's face was serious as he considered. Will you still love me just as much when the baby comes? Margaret's heart ached at the vulnerability in his voice. Oh, sweetheart, having another child doesn't mean I'll love you any less. Love isn't like a pie that gets smaller when you cut more pieces. It's like a candle flame. You can light 100 other candles from it, and the original flame burns just as bright. Billy nodded solemnly, then grinned. Can I help take care of the baby? I'm counting on your help, Margaret assured him. You're going to be the best big brother in all of Kansas. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching sunset paint the sky in gold and pink, Margaret reflected on the incredible journey that had brought her to this moment. A year ago, she'd been alone in Chicago, dreaming of a different life. Now she was surrounded by love, a husband who cherished her, a son who adored her, a baby on the way, and even Sister Catherine planning to make a new life nearby. What are you thinking about? Samuel asked, his arm tightening around her. Just all of this, Margaret said, gesturing to encompass the farm, their family, their future. A year ago, if someone had told me I'd be sitting here, married to you, with Billy as my son, and a baby on the way, I would have thought they were telling fairy tales. Do you miss it? Your old life in Chicago? Margaret considered seriously. I miss some of the children from the orphanage, and I worry about them sometimes. But miss that life? No. This is where I belong, Samuel. With you and Billy and this baby we're going to have. This is home. Billy, who had been playing with wooden horses on the porch steps, looked up. Ma, will you tell me the story again? About how you came here on the train? Margaret smiled. Billy never tired of hearing about her arrival in Millbrook. Well, Margaret began, settling more comfortably against Samuel's side, it was a cold October day, and I was very sad because Uncle Thomas had gone to heaven. But then you met me. Billy interrupted, as he always did. But then I met you, Margaret confirmed. A little boy with sandy hair and the kindest eyes I'd ever seen. And do you remember what you said to me? Billy grinned. I said you looked like the ma I wished for. That's right. And what did I think when you said that? You thought maybe God had answered both our prayers, Billy recited happily. And was I right? You were right, Billy said solemnly. God gave me the best ma in the whole world, and he gave you the best family. As stars began appearing in the darkening sky, Margaret felt deep contentment settle over her. She'd come west looking for one kind of love and found something far richer, a love built on daily kindness, shared dreams, and the simple miracle of choosing each other every day. I love you, she whispered to Samuel. I love you too, he whispered back. Both of you, he added, his hand coming to rest gently on her stomach. And I love all of you, Billy announced, scrambling up to squeeze between them on the porch swing. As they sat together in the gathering darkness, Margaret thought about the train ticket that still lay in her dresser drawer, her passage back to a life that no longer existed. Tomorrow, she decided, she would finally throw it away. She wouldn't be needing it. She was home. If this story of unexpected love, second chances, and the power of family touched your heart, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more incredible true stories from the American frontier. Hit that like button if you believe in the magic of new beginnings, and let us know in the comments what unexpected turn in your life led to your greatest blessing. Remember, sometimes the best chapters of our lives begin when we have the courage to stay when everything tells us to leave. Until next time, keep believing in the power of love to transform the most ordinary moments into extraordinary memories.